Valve didn't release the TI9 group stage schedule until just 20 hours before the start of TI9, and that left fans of the fantasy minigame in an awkward spot. Still, we now know the schedule for the first 4 days of the event, and that allows us to start filling out our fantasy lineups with a fair degree of confidence. Back in July, we did a video detailing how to play the fantasy minigame, and gave a general guideline for how to make your picks. But now that we know the actual schedule, we can start giving you more specific options for each day of the event. Technically, there's a lot to go over when it comes to the mathematics of Fantasy Dota 2, but we know not everybody has the time or patience to really learn about it in depth. With that in mind, you can do a fair bit of work in Fantasy Dota 2 just by picking the right teams on the right days. With that in mind, here's who you should go with on Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, and Day 4 of the group stage. If you need help past that, make sure to check out our Twitter account, where we'll have daily fantasy updates. And of course, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more TI9 Battle Pass content. As we discussed last month, it's not actually that hard to do reasonably well in the fantasy minigame. You just have to follow 2 simple rules. First and foremost, make sure you're fitting in as many games as possible on each day. This is most important during the group stage, where you'll have teams playing anywhere from 2 to 6 games each day. But it's still important in the early goings of the main event, where you'll see upper bracket teams playing in best of 3s while lower bracket teams play in best of 1s. The second rule, which we haven't actually touched on yet, is to actively avoid picking offlaners. Last year, the core position in the fantasy minigame consisted of carry players and mids. That's changed this year, with cores including carries and offlaners. That's huge because offlaners traditionally make way fewer points than carries do in Fantasy Dota 2. Because of that, you're basically leaving points on the table if you ever opt to go with an offlaner in the core position, and you could be picking a carry. We'll do our best to detail which cores you should pick for each day of the group stage, but once the main event rolls around, you should double check your lineup each day to make sure that you're only playing carries in the core position. So let's get started with Day 1 of the group stage. As we mentioned earlier, we're specifically looking for teams that will play 6 games each day. On Day 1, those teams include Team Secret, Team Liquid, PSG LGD, Chaos Esports Club, and TNC Predator. For the time being, it's best to avoid Chaos Esports Club. The team has a great deal of potential and could make a decent run at TI9, but they have some really tough matchups on Day 1, and we don't really know what form they'll be in at the start of the event. At the core position, you're going to want to choose between Team Secret's Nisha, Team Liquid's Miracle, PSG LGD's Ame, and TNC Predator's Gabby. Past that, none of these teams have uniquely strong matchups, so picking out your supports and mid laners basically comes down to picking out the best cards you have available. The focus shifts to Group B on Day 2, and the teams playing 6 games that day are Evil Geniuses, OG, Navi, Infamous, Ninjas in Pyjamas, and Vici Gaming. The team you'll want to avoid on Day 2 is Infamous. The South American squad is the worst on-paper team competing at TI9, and faces a tough road just to make it out of the group stage. At the core role, you're going to want to choose from Evil Genius's Arteezy, OG's Anna, Ninjas in Pyjamas' Ace, Navi's Crystallize, and Vici Gaming's Paparazzi. Once again, the specific matchups end up being something of a wash on Day 2, as the best teams are largely playing against one another. Day 3 is actually the last day where teams will play 6 games, and it's actually the easiest day of the group stage to choose from. Team Secret, Alliance, Newbee, Chaos Esports Club, Keen Gaming, and Mineski are all set to play 6 games that day. That said, you're going to want to go very heavy on Team Secret on Day 3. They have favorable matchups against TNC Predator and Mineski, and that should translate to some big points for them. You won't want to include Zai because of the previously discussed issues with the offlaners, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to play 4 Team Secret players alongside a carry like Faded from Chaos Esports Club or Yawar from Newbee. Finally, on Day 4, you're looking for the teams that will be playing 4 times. That group includes Virtus.pro, Evil Geniuses, Vici Gaming, Ninjas in Pyjamas, Infamous, and Royal Never Give Up. Once again, you're going to want to avoid picking Infamous on Day 4, even though they have some relatively manageable matchups. And just like on Day 2, it's really hard to favor any particular team given how stacked Group B is. At the core position, you'll want to choose between RNG's Monet, Evil Genius's Arteezy, NIP's Ace, Vici Gaming's Paparazzi, and Virtus.pro's Ramses. In the mid lane and support roles, it ultimately comes down to who you have the best cards of and what your gut tells you on that day. And that wraps up our fantasy picks for the TI9 group stage. While you can still rack up a lot of points just by locking in your lineup in advance like this, to maximize your value, it's worth keeping an eye out on how things play out during the event. Every year we see underdogs like CDEC Gaming and Digital Chaos make surprisingly strong runs, while perceived favorites end up hitting the rocks early. So once again, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us on YouTube for our upcoming TI9 content, and check us out on Twitter, where we'll be giving you day-by-day fantasy tips.